Thank you, Ruben, for the introduction. I'm Meagen Baldy. I'm from the Hoopa Valley Tribe in Hoopa, California. I work for the Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative as a food safety specialist. So I'm honored to be here today. I've sat on this board since 2017, and so I appreciate the time and the honor to be able to speak to you guys today. I am a mother of 6. I have 5 boys, 1 girl. I have 4 teenage boys in the house, so as you can imagine, food is super important to me and my family. If you've ever raised teenage boys or any kids in general, you know that they can eat. I mean, my daughter can eat too. Like she loves herself some food. So first and foremost, I'm a mom and I'm an auntie in Indian country. I've occupied a space of a food maker at home. My kids love my food. I always tell them, like, you guys are very spoiled because a lot of people like the food that I cook, and you guys are lucky because sometimes we'll go to places and they'll be like, who made the beans? Who made the potato salad? I'm like, shh. Not everybody cooks the way that I do at home. You guys are just spoiled. So they're a little bit of food critics, but I definitely enjoy cooking for my family. So how I began to occupy this space that I'm sitting in today was, I just remember being a little kid and living on the res and just being hungry and having a lot of siblings. So I grew up in a huge family. I also had 5 siblings, and I just was the oldest of all of the girls. And so I have an older brother, but he always tells me I'm his older sister because I'm always the one that is bossing everybody around and making sure that everybody has what they need. I remember just being hungry at a time when I was young. I was about 8 years old, and I just remember, telling my dad, he used to work in the woods and he would come home on the weekends, and I just remember telling my dad, like, hey, we haven't eaten anything and there's not much food in the house and we're wondering what to do. And he said, at the time I had a stepmother that wasn't very attentive to us. And he said, well, she didn't feed you. And we would say, no, she didn't feed us. And so he said, well, okay, well, you come in the kitchen. And I remember being 8 years old and just peeling potatoes. And he said, you're never going to let your brothers and sisters go hungry again, And I just thought, okay, so that was my responsibility at that time, was to feed my family. And it just kind of became who I am. In a way, I really feel like, that is a responsibility that I have, is to feed my family and to feed my people. So as a producer, when I came into the space of ag, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I always just thought about ag as like corn and tractors and not the type of ag that we have at home. So a lot of the things that we do with the traditional foods is acorns is our staple. We have our fish, we have our berries and our wild gathered whether it's mushrooms or medicinals, we have all these things that at home that we use as a food source. And a lot of it we're using as a food source because it's subsistence to us. Again, having a large family, a lot of the food that we get, we either hunted, fished, or gathered. And so trying to offset that food cost. And when I came to understand that that was ag, I think I started coming into, working with the KTRCD. So I worked with the Klamath Trinity Resource Conservation District. I started with them about 12 years ago, and it's a tribal nonprofit. And I remember coming into this space with them and realizing that what I was doing was actually considered ag. And so I thought, okay, well, if I look at ag in that view of, tractors and corn, I think that other people in, the United States probably looks at it like that and not our traditional food. So I kind of wanted to figure out a way to have other people understand that our ag was important. And so my son, I was hooked up through IAC. Our TA had come into our area and he had given us the information about the youth essay contest. And so my son at the time, Robert, he had written an essay and submitted it to IAC, and I was able to tag along with him to the IAC event as a chaperone, which was really neat because I came into this atmosphere and I got to meet a lot of other food producers, and it was so refreshing to be able to share a lot of our foods together and that cross-cultural sharing and that cross-tribal sharing with each and every nation that we came into contact with. And, it was kind of funny because I started coming and, my son himself really got so lightened up about it because he was like, oh, Mom, all the foods that we do is ag. And I was like, yeah, everything that we're making, everything that we're doing, your hunting practices, your fishing practices, the gathering that we do, that is all agriculture. And so it was really neat to also share with other tribes about our traditional foods. So, being that active mother and, going along with my kid and being here was kind of how I came into this place of being on the board, which was so just crazy how it happened, and all through my son coming to IAC. And so I just think that, that's a call to you chaperones out there that are coming along with your children, that there's places that you can occupy in this space to get the awareness about feeding your community and feeding your people, and meeting and networking with, USDA, meeting and networking with, places that might have resources to bring back to your nations, and so that was a great thing that happened to me as being a mom here and sitting on this board as a Pacific Region representative since 2017. I wanted to really highlight being a mom, an auntie in ag, or a granddaughter, or a sister, or a daughter in ag, and how that plays an important role. A lot of times we look and we think about moms in the kitchen and we just know that moms are just there, but we don't look at them as a place of strength. Oftentimes, moms are work all day, they come home, they cook. Sometimes they have a baby on their hip, they're on their phone and they're turning over some food, like octomoms, I always say, do you need one more hand? Yes, most moms need one more hand. If we could have had one more hand, we'd be dangerous. But, this ability to be able to manage so much, and be those food producers in our homes and in our communities is such a place of strength, and we should always celebrate our women that are making food. I listened to an elder before, and she was talking about when she woke up in the morning that she would hear the pounding on the rocks, and that it was the women making acorns across the flat. And that's how she would wake up in the morning, is hearing those acorns being milled and being prepped. And I think about the stories that my grandmother told me about food and how it was impactful and how it was important and how, it was a thing that was never taken lighthearted when you had to go get food. My grandmother talked of a story about my grandfather and her when they were hungry. They went down to their old grand's house, and basically my papa told my old grand that they were hungry and that he wanted to go hunting. And my old grand sat him down in a chair and she sang a song over him and she prayed over him. And she told him to get up now and go out. And so he did go out, and my grandma and my old grand were sitting there, and my old grand told my grandmother, get that frying pan ready, he's coming back. And sure enough, he came back into back down to the house with the deer on his back. And so that's the way that we looked at food at one time, and that's the way that we still need to look at food. It's that connection to food, right? It's that journey of food, and how important it is that when we are hungry, that we have a way to go get our own food and how to access that. And we all have that right and that privilege, and we should be able to do that. And I heard of another story that just rings true to my, I always think about this, because when I'm home, if I'm ever home and you go to my house, you're gonna find me in the kitchen. That is that's my domain, that's where I live at, and my grandma talked of a story of her mom and how her mom was always in the kitchen, and she was either cooking food, processing food, cleaning food, canning food. She did so much of that food processing, and that she was always in awe that her mom was always in the kitchen. And she talked of a story where a neighbor back then, back in in her day and age, when food came to the house, it was either picked from a tree, it was grown in the garden, or it was gathered or hunted or fished. And she talked about the time when these cherries came into her house. And it was so cute. My grandma was like, I was so excited about those cherries. I just loved them. They were so good, but I had to go to school. She's like, so mom chased me off to go to school, and I just remember at school all day, I could not wait to get home to eat those cherries. And she said when she got home, her mother said, hey, look, it made a whole quart of cherries, and she was just so bummed out that her mom had canned those cherries up. But I think about my great-gram, and her thinking was, this bowl of cherries is only gonna last so long, so she needed to preserve it, and to put it up and to keep it around. So I think about those stories that we were told, and I always love to sit down and hear about food and how food was processed from our elders, especially our women, and how they occupy this space of strength when they're in the kitchen. And we should always look at it like that. And especially, a call to action to our men and our young men, when you see your women in the kitchen or when you see your mothers in the kitchen, celebrate that. It's a good thing, they're in there, they're producing, and they're giving their love to you in a way through their food that you're connected to that food. So, and I always think about these traditional roles and how, our foods used to be. And I always think about like how our kids come to us today and they're like, Mom, what's for dinner? Mom, what's for lunch? Mom, what's for breakfast? And I'm always like, food. But I think about our ancestors and how they must have got those same questions, like, Mom, what's for dinner? Acorns and fish. Mom, what's for lunch? Acorns and berries. Mom, what's for breakfast? And there was always these foods that, bring us together, and that the mothers were always looked at a place to, we need to find out where this food is coming from. And, throughout the years, working with the KTRCD, I started working in the community garden. And I just remember working there and not having any type of growing experience when I started. And I remember thinking like, I just used to be a garden princess and used to just go into the garden when my husband would grow with my salt shaker and eat tomatoes and cucumbers and just, live the high life. And now I'm managing an entire garden. And, I started growing in this growing season, and I remember getting a bunch of kids to the community garden. And as they came to the community garden, I had little bags for them because they were picking cherry tomatoes and lemon cucumbers. How many of you guys ever had a lemon cucumber out there? All right, they're good things, right? They're like an apple, you can eat them just straight from the vine. But we were giving out this produce that the kids were picking, and they were all taking it from these bags. And I remember getting a little tug on my leg. It was first graders, and she came up to me and she just tugged on my leg, and I looked down at her and she said, I'm gonna take this food home because I need to feed my mom and her boyfriend because we don't have any food in the house. And I thought, oh my goodness, and it just took me back to that place at 8 years old and having that responsibility to feed people and feed my siblings, and it kind of gave me this like aha moment that I was where I was supposed to be at in life and that I was exactly where I needed to be and to help my people with food. And so, with that, I think that everybody and each and every one of us are given a gift. And my gift is to be able to make food and to be able to feed people and to be able to come up here and talk to others and, hopefully inspire you to do some of these things back in your home. And, especially if you're women, understanding that what you do in your home and how you are a food producer is so powerful and it's so important to our people. And, just applaud you all and just give you guys all the thanks because I know I live on the reservation. I know what happens. I have nieces and nephews and cousins that grow up in food insecurity. I've raised a lot of nieces and nephews throughout my life. I have 6 kids that I've raised out of my home, but I have a ton of nieces and nephews that are always around me, or always come to my house. And every time that they come to my home, they take their seat at the breakfast bar and I just shoot plates of food at them. And they're just like, Auntie, can you make me this? Auntie, will you make me that? And, they know that they have that ability to come to my home and they know that they have that food security there, that they don't have to worry about, if they're hungry, that they're gonna go unfed. And I think that that's a gift that I was given, and I'm so glad to share that, to not only my family, but to my community. No matter what, I love my people, and they're always gonna be the number one priority in my life. And I'm always gonna work hard for their food access and our food security, and that's why I'm honored to occupy this space to highlight Hoopa and our foods. Some of the pictures that you've seen behind me that were rolling, were community food projects that we've done. We've done cooking classes, canning classes, where we've taught kids, how to fillet salmon and how to can them, how to process acorns. These are things that are super important for me, that the next generation of kids that I teach will have this understanding of food and their connection. Things that I tell these kids when I do classes with them, especially with canning classes, is that their hearts and their minds and how they act has to be in a good way, and that they should have laughter and love when they're creating these food products, because when they open that jar of jam, jelly, fish, whatever we're canning, they're gonna have that core memory with that food, and that connection to food is going to be so important to them, and they're gonna remember whether they were laughing at a joke or whether they were, talking about their fish stories or their family, all of those memories go into that food. And I think about the times like when my husband and hunts with my sons, and that memory of them coming together and those prayers that they put up. And when they get in deer, how my husband will guide my sons, into processing that deer in a good way and show them how, each and every part of that animal is important to utilize, and he's just right behind them and he guides them along the way. And that's how we are as Indian people. We guide each other, we guide our children, we guide our loved ones in food, in our food systems. And that's why we're here today, is to take up this next generation and make sure that they understand the importance of their food system and how we're so connected to food. When you go to the grocery store and you buy a tomato or you buy some, whatever you're buying, you don't know where that food came from, you don't know who grew it, but if you grow that food, if you gather that food, if you produce that food, or if you make a value-added product, you are connected to that food and your love goes into that food. And, if we're feeding it to our people, it's gonna be so great. So we wanna make sure that our kids, know about their food system. That's one thing I always bring my children along at our gathering or when we're doing cooking. Even as they were growing up, I would do cooking and canning classes in their classroom, and I would allow them to help me run the whole canning class or the cooking class because they were involved and they felt like they had ownership over that class. And it's important for them to love their foods, their traditional foods, because when we're gone, they're gonna be the ones here to protect it. They're not gonna protect something that they don't love. So we need to instill that love for their food. We need to instill that love for, even if it is for their farm, and even if it is a family farm, we need to instill that love because they're gonna be the ones to protect it when we're gone. I just wanted to take this time to thank the Intertribal Agriculture Council. Through working with them, I've been able to sit on this board and work with a lot of the youth over the years. We were able to do a Pacific Regional Youth Summit in Hawaii, in California, and we were able to take youth and show them different foods from different cultures. We were able to go to Hawaii and learn from the native Hawaiians there about their food. The kids really enjoyed that. We were able to bring kids from Hawaii, California, Nevada, up into my area, and we were able to visit the Hoopa, the Talawa, the Karuk, and the Yuroks, and we were able to share foods from those areas with the kids back in 2019. And during that time, it was just great to see all that cross-cultural food exchange and the kids to be super excited to show off their foods, to highlight their foods, to highlight their communities. And I think that that's a great thing that the Intertribal Agriculture Council does. I also want to highlight the women of the IAC. You know, we have some pretty dynamic women. Our executive director here, you know, we have a bunch of great women that sit on the board, women that work as staff. You guys are all amazing. Some of you all are mothers and aunties, and you guys are holding down a career, and you guys are holding down your households, you know, and I think it's so inspiring to see that. I also want to highlight the women at IFAI. You know, one way that I actually came to learn about IFAI was through my son. He went to their summer youth program, and that's how I met Janie Hip and Aaron and Stacy. And it was really neat how that came into full circle. Now I'm working with them, and they're such amazing people and amazing women, you know, and they have so much strength and love for the food systems in Indian country. And you know, that love, that anti-love of, you know, food systems and that anti-love for kids and the youth is so important. And, you know, there's so many aunties of ag out there in Indian country that y'all should be celebrated. And I just applaud all you guys. And I wanted to thank you guys for this time and appreciate all of our women in ag out there that are holding down our food systems.